the next one I'll show you. But this is indeed the adventures of Captain Suzanne. This application can use found photographs from the internet, found images. It can also use photographs that are taken. So this is a student in the classroom. You can use a variety of templates, a variety of, I guess, different effects for the image so that you can create something certainly atypical than we would normally be able to construct within the classroom with, say, pen and paper, a poster board, or crayons and markers. Those students can do wonderful things with those. This is, I think, quite different. This took approximately 2 days for them to do, 2 class periods of about 70 minutes. They caught on to it extremely quick and were able to do some pretty good projects, I think, across the board. So that is the first that I will show you. The second was a bit more involved. It used the GarageBand application that, if you have children and they like music, perhaps you've been exposed to that, maybe not. Typically what it would be is an application that would allow you to create songs and music, hence GarageBand. But what it can also do, like other applications, but in a way, you can create podcasts with it, or kind of audio presentations. What I asked the students to do, we were talking about Axis expansion as a pre-Second World War expansion by Nazi Germany, Fascist Italy, and Japan, was getting into the discussion of how potentially, it's a bit cut off, but that's okay. How maybe we could present this other than a standard PowerPoint or a standard stand-up and speak presentation or a poster board. Surprisingly enough, Kyle, who presented earlier, this is actually his group's presentation, so he's a star of the show this evening. There's certainly some learning curves to be learned with the iPad, not just on the student's part, but on my part as well. Throughout the year, sometimes I feel, am I using it enough? Not that I'm using it too much, but am I using it enough? How can I integrate it into the curriculum that I already have without derailing the point that I need to reach by the end of the school year? How can I integrate it without spending too much time on a project or this and that? This highlights a lot of those things. It was, number one, a new project for me that I had never done with the class before, certainly using a different type of technology than had ever been used before. And therefore, I think my expectations were a little bit naive in terms of how much I could ask of the students, how they could respond to that, and really how much time, ultimately, it was necessary. This took a couple days longer than I had hoped, but it is what it is. I couldn't say, well, last year didn't go this way. Of course it didn't, because it didn't go that way, because it never existed. But we worked it out, and I think going towards the future, I think there's other ways that I can reflect on this and streamline this, or come up with other ways of integrating it into the classroom experience. So I will show you what they were able to do. Just I'll try and find something a little exciting. And I also created a tutorial to introduce this with them. I need to plug in the speakers. My apologies for the delay, so you can get the full effect. Kyle, I don't know if you'll talk on this or not. I apologize. Try not to blow you all out of the water.
How did the international community respond?
There is antipathy towards Japan. In the short time I've been here, I've seen several different media reports covering these atrocities.
Thank you for your time. Now we go to Larne, Italy with another event leading up to World War II.
Starting October 1935, the Second Italo-Abyssinian War began. Fought between Italy and the Ethiopian Empire, it began when Italy supposedly crossed the border when they built this fort here, behind me.
The fort seems to be coming down in places. Was this war violent?
As you can see, the fort is falling apart due to the violence of the Italians. The people were rifled for and praised Mussolini, their leader, for the invasion. Outsiders, such as Hitler, supported the invasion. The League of Nations voted to end sanctions against Italy.
I understand that this was not the only major headline regarding Italy lately. You're right, I am Marina on the border of Italy. On April 7th to 12th, 1939, Italy annexed Albania. Italy had wanted the point of Lori and Sicyon Island because that would give them control of the Adriatic Sea. Who was in charge of the annexation? Mussolini was motivated to get Albania because Italy occupied southern Albania, so Austria-Hungary would not be in control of it during the war. Italy invaded them with armed forces. It was violent.
So perhaps you realized there were a couple different vocal kind of things going on. We had a telephone modification, kind of a large room modification, and then you saw the bridge music, kind of the bumper music that the kids put in. All of those things were right there in the iPad. The one limitation is it was very difficult for them to work on this, I think, at home, at least the creation of the project. They could work on the research, they could work on the script, but all of the recording had to be done within the school, which doesn't have a lot of soft edges or private spaces, so that complicated things at times as well. Going forward throughout the rest of the year, I look forward to using kind of the video capabilities of this. Speaking of the iPad, going back to it, all the research time that they were given in class could be done with the iPads. So they could sit at a cluster of desks, say 4 students, all 4 have iPads sitting at a desk talking to each other. It's not spread out within a computer lab, so where you're shouting over to each other and looking for things, this and that. It was much more collaborative than other projects that I had seen, at least within the classroom. Unfortunately, with the difficulty of having to leave them behind, the degree of collaboration outside of school gets a little complicated. I know that Mrs. St. Arnaud has recently used these as well within her classroom, and I would certainly look forward to, as the years go by, more teachers having this at their disposal. Not just in the form of having access to the cart that Mrs. St. Arnaud and I have, but the potential for more. And particularly as we go forward discussing the new school and the breakout spaces, etc., I think that the collaboration that this can entail far outweighs just being a typical classroom setting, me talking to them or them talking to each other in a, lack of a better term, what we perceive as a traditional setting. So hopefully that was entertaining for you. Thank you very much for your time.
Any questions of Mr. Kane at all? Any comments, questions?
No. Question first for the superintendent. I think we got 150 iPads in the district this year, and they've all come from grants, correct?
It came from the capital improvement
Right. Okay.
through the town.
So my question is there any way to get more into the district?
My pleasure.
I guess, and my comment is, I'm really impressed that we aren't just introducing iPads because they're cool.
Mm-hmm.
Every school we've gone to where we've seen the iPads, they seem to me they're being used to make kids more interested in the topics that they're learning. So we're not just using them because they're cool technology. We're giving the students something to do that gives them more of a vested interest in what they're learning. And I think the 2 things we saw tonight point that out also. And so I'm really impressed with that, because one of my concerns was we're going to just start seeing schools throwing technology in because we have to, because everybody else is doing it. Mm-hmm. So I would just think that any way that we can introduce more of these to the schools, any way that kids can at least have access to them to take them home, because as Mr. Kane states, it might be difficult if you're doing a project. You can't work on it at home unless you have one at home. Maybe you can somehow transfer the information or whatever. But I really would like to see us work to get more of these into the system.
I couldn't agree with you more, Mr. Webster. When I had a chance to observe, excuse me, Mr. Kane's class, at the end of the class, Mr. Kane turned it over to me and asked me if I wanted to speak to the students about anything. And I asked the students to tell me, how has this changed their learning? And they spoke quite articulately about engagement. And there was increased engagement that Mr. Kane just referred to as far as the collaborative piece of this project. Every student was engaged at all times, and that's something that isn't typically achieved in a more traditional classroom. And as you had mentioned previously, it's very important to be able to find ways for students to engage with this technology outside of the schoolhouse, because they're only with us for 6 to 7 hours a day. And they brought that up to me as well. One of the limitations was not being able to take the iPads home. So as we become more comfortable with the technology and monitoring the technology, we'll be able to afford more opportunities to our students.
Anybody else? Questions, comments?
I'm not
Left?
sure.
Go ahead, Mike.
Are you aware that you just opened up not only the history portion of it, but you could have a future comic book illustrator because of that iPad app, the first one.
No, I
And then
think
the
you're
second
right.
one was that you opened up another piece of technology, which was sound studios. So you can create an audio technician right out of your history.
And I think what you reference is true, because a lot of times we are limited to pen and paper or more standard presentation styles or this and that. This allows a broad, multifaceted array of being able to demonstrate yourself. You have a student that's reluctant to present in front of the class, now you have their voice on microphone, it's much easier, it's much more detached, but then you have that, you're right, that editing piece, that piecing together someone who can see the puzzle and create a really nice presentation as a whole. And moving forward, I think there's all kinds of things that suddenly you touch upon something far removed from what they're used to.
Right,
Absolutely.
even the art classes in elementary school, you know, you've opened up art. We didn't spend any additional money. We have the capital to spend on the technology. We didn't have to hire new teachers or open new classrooms. It's all there for them. We just open up a new world. I'm actually really impressed that in a year's worth of time, and I think the school system itself, right from the elementary all the way up to the high school, has really changed their, you know, the focus on how to attack this technology, which I'm not sure it was very clear a year or two ago. And that's great, because technology moves so quickly. You know, and I see it every day in my profession. So it's great to see that the school is moving that quick also.
Thanks, Mike.
I've got a couple of points. One is you can't travel back in time. You can only go forward. The future is where we have to go. And you just
Cliff,
proved
let's
it.
be more optimistic about that. I mean,
The beauty of the new school is that it has all kinds of opportunities throughout the school in breakout places, formal breakout places and informal breakout places, like all along Main Street, for this kind of activity to take place. As I sat through the programming of the new school, I kind of became aware of that. You have to remember that I grew up with a slide rule and, you know, hand done. But today's opportunities are so vast. Watching the second grade grandchild teaching grandma how to use her cell phone is amazing. And we just have such opportunity to expand knowledge. And the new school really will help us optimize that.
I want to disagree with Cliff there. If you remember the Twilight Zone episode when the plane goes through the Soundbar, I believe, and they end up in New York, and it's, I think, whenever the World's Fair was in New York, and they did go back in time.
that was making
Can't do it.
Well, it was Twilight
Physically
Zone, so
impossible.
I'm not really sure if it was make
You
believe
need
or not.
you
But I
need to
do-
take a course at MIT.
I do remember that episode.
Thank you, Mr. Kane.
My
Thank you.
pleasure. Thank you.
Next, Mrs. Brown is our curriculum specialist for physical education and health education, and since assuming the position for this school year, I have to say Claudia has done an extremely good job of bringing a number of new initiatives to our school. As recent as today, where we had a representative of the American Heart Association come to our faculty meeting and speak to us about heart health. That was all arranged by Claudia, and she's coming back to speak to students later this month. But I asked Claudia to come because I thought it would be good for all of you to hear about some of the really innovative things that are going on in the physical education, health education departments. Later this evening, I'm going to be proposing to you a new course, Fitness in the 21st Century, and that is really, I'll say, the brainchild of Claudia and her department this year to, once again, advance health education and physical education for our students here at the high school. So Claudia does have a little video presentation that she's put together, so to Animoto. So for your
Good
viewing
evening,
pleasure.
everybody. This is paper. I know you don't see much of this anymore, but I just thought you could look over this while I get my video up, and I would ask that neither Mr. King nor those young MIT prodigies leave this room before I get my video up. Just in case. That was wonderful. You were all wonderful. All right, so I have to say that this is a selfish presentation because I'm practicing this so that my freshmen can put together their final project for part of their final exam. We have a final exam